What if one of the world's most celebrated pop groups hit a story so heartbreaking it changed everything forever? This is not just the tale of chart-topping hits, it's the hidden truth of love, loss, and resilience that shaped ABBA's rise and eventual fall. Because behind the dazzling lights and timeless music, the emotional cracks were already forming, leading to a moment no one saw coming. Take a deep breath before we dive in. Sometimes the most beautiful music is born from the deepest scars. Where do you get the ideas from? For ABBA, the answer was deceptively simple. We just sit down and work. Yet behind that modest statement lay the story of one of the most iconic pop groups in history. ABBA enthralled audiences worldwide with irresistible melodies and unforgettable live performances. But beneath the glitter and glamour was a fragile web of relationships and private struggles, battles that would ultimately lead to their tragic end. ABBA's story began in Stockholm in 1972, when Benny Andersson and Annie Frid Lyngstad teamed up with Björn Ulvaeus and Agnetha Fältskog. Using the first letters of their names, they created a title that would soon become legendary. ABBA, their 1974 Eurovision win with Waterloo, launched them onto the world stage, followed by an unstoppable wave of hits, Dancing Queen, Mamma Mia, and more, that defined a generation. Yet even as ABBA's fame soared, private tensions simmered within the group. One of the greatest challenges was the unraveling romance between Benny Andersson and Annie Frid Lyngstad. Their once passionate relationship, filled with creativity and promise, slowly crumbled, ending with their split in 1980 and divorce in 1981. Remarkably, they continued working side by side in ABBA despite the personal pain. Lyngstad later reflected, "We can collaborate much more effectively now that Benny and I are no longer together. We still communicate, but the bond is not what it once was." With over 380 million records sold globally, their creative synergy was still a cornerstone of ABBA's magic. Andersson co-wrote classics like SOS, The Winner Takes It All, and Waterloo with Björn Ulvaeus, while also producing Lyngstad's acclaimed solo album Frida in 1971. Despite the highs and lows of their relationship, Andersson and Lyngstad remained one of music's most remarkable creative duos, even co-creating the beloved musical and film Mamma Mia. The other half of ABBA, Agnetha Fältskog and Björn Ulvaeus, had their own turbulent story. The couple, who met in 1969 and married in 1971, appeared to be the perfect match. They shared 2 children, a flourishing marriage, and the kind of musical success that made them seem untouchable. On the surface, personal life and professional triumph blended seamlessly as ABBA conquered the world. But behind closed doors, the cracks were beginning to show. By 1979, ABBA had reached their peak, and so had the strain on Fältskog and Ulvaeus's marriage. Their divorce, publicly framed as amicable, carried deep emotional wounds. Yet, just like their bandmates, they chose to continue working together. During this period, Ulvaeus penned the devastating lyrics to The Winner Takes It All, a song Fältskog performed with haunting vulnerability. The emotions were so raw that over time, singing it became almost unbearable, as it reopened wounds of grief and loss too close to her heart. And yet, despite personal turmoil, Fältskog and Ulvaeus remained the creative backbone of ABBA. Their ability to separate artistry from emotion kept the group alive, even as their private lives unraveled. Together with Andersson and Lyngstad, they helped cement ABBA's legacy in music history, though the price of sustaining this illusion was heartbreakingly high. When Björn Ulvaeus publicly introduced his new girlfriend, Christina Sass, who was 28 years younger than him, in 22, his personal life took a dramatic and unexpected turn. Christina, who was working at Universal Music Group on the promotion of ABBA's Voyage album, had already been quietly dating Ulvaeus before the news broke. Their first official public appearance together took place at the premiere of Ulvaeus's musical adaptation of Pippi Longstocking. Ulvaeus openly expressed that Christina had become a deeply meaningful presence in his life, and that this new relationship brought him genuine happiness. For Agnetha Fältskog, however, happiness after her separation from Ulvaeus in 1980 proved far more difficult to find. While fans and the media remained endlessly fascinated by her post-divorce life, what followed was a series of complicated and often troubled relationships. In the early 1980s, she briefly dated Swedish ice hockey player Peter Cedergren before marrying surgeon Thomas Sonnenfeld in 1990. The marriage was so discreet that the public remained unaware of it until years later, and by 1993, it had quietly ended in divorce. Then, in the mid-1990s, Veldskog entered perhaps her most unlikely relationship with Gert van der Graaf, a Dutch forklift driver and passionate ABBA fan. Reports suggest that van der Graaf pursued her relentlessly for 2 years before they eventually went public in 1997. Despite the unusual beginnings and the unstable foundation of the relationship, the pair remained together for several years. But Veldskog's struggles extended far beyond her romantic life. Known as one of the most remarkable voices of her generation, she was simultaneously wrestling with deep insecurities that only intensified after ABBA's divorce and eventual breakup. The fame that brought her to global stages also magnified her vulnerabilities. Naturally introverted, Veldskog never felt fully at ease in the public eye, and being thrust into constant spotlight eroded her confidence even further. She once admitted to recurring nightmares of being overwhelmed, eaten alive by fans, a striking reflection of her discomfort with fame. Large audiences often left her feeling anxious, and her fear of flying, worsened by a harrowing experience during an electrical storm, only deepened her sense of isolation and loneliness. Another hidden struggle was the tension she felt with fellow ABBA member Annie Fried Lyngstad. Although both women always remained professional and outwardly polite, Veldskog later revealed that their contrasting personalities and upbringings often created friction. Frida and I had different temperaments, different backgrounds, and different ways of being, she explained, admitting that irritation and weariness sometimes surfaced between them. The perception of rivalry weighed heavily on her, further chipping away at her already fragile self-image. Adding yet another layer to her insecurities was her complicated relationship with language. Despite her extraordinary talent, Veldskog never felt entirely comfortable expressing herself in English, which was the dominant language of ABBA's global success. She often felt exposed during interviews and public appearances, believing she could not articulate her thoughts or feelings fully. The pressure to deliver flawless performances in a foreign tongue made her feel inadequate, driving her to avoid situations where she might feel unprepared. These struggles, combined with her natural tendency toward privacy, only pushed her further into seclusion, mirroring the legendary Swedish actress Greta Garbo, who famously retreated from the spotlight. Through all these challenges, Agnetha Veldskog's brilliance as an artist never dimmed, but the personal toll of fame, insecurity, and emotional turbulence left an indelible mark on her life story. Before moving forward, pause for a moment. Breathe deeply, let your shoulders drop, and remind yourself that even icons like Agnetha carried invisible battles. Sometimes the strongest voices come from the most fragile hearts. Agnetha Veldskog's hardships extended far beyond the stage and spotlight. Alongside her artistic struggles, she was confronted with heartbreaking personal tragedies that would shape her life in painful and lasting ways. The first was the sudden and devastating loss of her mother, Birgit Veldskog, in 1986. Birgit, who had long battled depression, passed away under tragic circumstances that led to speculation about her state of mind in those final days. Years of strain in her marriage to Agnetha's father, Ingvar, whose alcoholism created deep tension at home, had worsened Birgit's fragile mental health. For Agnetha, her mother's death was shattering. She carried the grief quietly, choosing not to reveal the truth for more than a decade. In her autobiography, she even wrote that Birgit had died in an accident, a reflection of how sensitive and stigmatized mental health struggles still were at the time. Her silence spoke volumes. It was both a shield against judgment and a way to survive the unbearable weight of loss. Despite her pain, Agnetha continued to visit her father after Birgit's passing. By then, his health was already in steep decline, and he had been placed in a special care facility. Yet the bond between father and daughter had long been strained, fractured by his alcoholism. Birgit's death had already left Agnetha isolated, and losing her father so soon after only deepened that loneliness. In 1995, Ingvar succumbed to alcohol-related complications, and within less than a decade, Agnetha had lost both parents in heartbreaking succession. She later admitted that after her mother's death, she felt utterly abandoned, forced to face her trauma in isolation, her sense of fragility magnified. The back-to-back tragedies left permanent scars. Already vulnerable due to her lack of confidence, her crippling stage fright, and her severe fear of flying, Agnetha now withdrew even further from the world, Her biographer noted that everything about her changed the moment her mother died. She turned inward, distancing herself from people and shielding her private world. Fans and observers began to notice how strange and reclusive she had become. But behind that veil was a woman grappling with unresolved grief and inner demons. For Agnetha, retreat became a form of protection, and music became her language of survival. This deeply personal pain eventually found expression in her 2004 album, My Coloring Book. With its tender renditions of songs from the 1960s, she poured longing, nostalgia, and sorrow into every note. Her voice, sweet, vulnerable, yet full of quiet strength, offered listeners a glimpse into her hidden emotional world. Through the music, her resilience emerged, proving that even a heart scarred by tragedy could still shine with beauty and truth. A year later, in 2005, her life unexpectedly shifted again. Agnetha's long-standing friendship with businessman Bertil Nordstrom blossomed into romance. After decades of loneliness and relationships that rarely lasted, this bond surprised both her and the world. Nordstrom was no ordinary companion. A successful businessman with close ties to the Swedish royal family, he brought stability and warmth into Agnetha's life. When they appeared publicly together for the first time, ABBA fans everywhere rejoiced, believing it marked a new, happier chapter for her. Though their relationship ended not long after it began, it represented a turning point. For the first time in more than 20 years, Agnetha seemed ready to step cautiously out of her isolation. The brief romance with Nordstrom, though short-lived, appeared to lighten some of the heavy burden she had carried for so long. The grief of losing both parents, the loneliness of retreat, and the silence of unspoken pain. It was a fragile but hopeful reminder that even after great loss, the possibility of healing remained. Still, as with so many moments in her life, hope was shadowed by her insecurities, her fear of flying, her stage fright, her struggle with confidence. When the relationship ended, she returned once again to solitude, retreating into the private world she had always found both safe and suffocating. And yet, through every setback, one thing remained unshaken: her extraordinary gift for music. It was this gift that carried her legacy forward, touching hearts across generations and reminding fans that behind her reclusiveness lived a spirit of enduring strength. Although Agnetha's brief relationship with Bertil Nordstrom eventually faded, it marked a quiet turning point in her life. For the first time in many years, she stepped out from the shadowy corners of memory and pain and allowed herself to experience the fragile warmth of love again. But Agnetha was not the only member of ABBA whose life was shaped by profound personal losses. Annie Frid Frida Lyngstad, too, carried a story marked by tragedy from the very beginning. Frida was born on November 15, 1945, in the small Norwegian village of Bjørkåsen. Her birth was complicated not by health, but by history itself. Her father, Alfred Hasse, was a German soldier stationed in Norway during World War II, while her mother, Sinni Lyngstad, was Norwegian. After the war ended, Alfred was believed to have died when his ship sank on the way back to Germany. Sinni, left alone with her newborn daughter, faced the heavy burden of raising Frida in a world where ties to German soldiers were viewed with suspicion and hostility. Out of fear of retribution, Sinni, her infant daughter, and Frida's maternal grandmother, Agni, moved to Sweden when Frida was just 18 months old. Tragedy struck again soon after. On September 28, 1947, when Frida was only 2 years old, Sinni died suddenly from kidney failure. This devastating loss left little Frida in the care of her grandmother in the Swedish town of Torshälla, just outside Eskilstuna. Though Agni gave her granddaughter a loving home, Frida grew up without the comforting presence of her mother, a wound that would stay with her forever. From an early age, she developed resilience, strength, and a quiet independence, qualities born from necessity. It was only later in life that she would fully understand how this early absence had shaped the way she viewed love, relationships, and trust. Despite the cloud of loss that hung over her childhood, Frida found a lifeline in music. With her grandmother's stability and support, she nurtured her gift for singing, channeling her early emotions of displacement and grief into a voice that carried both power and tenderness. This ability to weave vulnerability into her music would one day resonate with millions of listeners, making her one of ABBA's unforgettable voices. But life was not finished testing her. Decades later, Frida faced a heartbreak even more devastating than losing her mother. On January 13, 1998, her daughter, Liselott Lisa Kasper, was killed in a tragic car accident in Lonia, Michigan. Lieselot, born on April 15, 1967, to Frida and her first husband Ragnar Fredriksson, had been the center of her mother's world. As Frida's only child, Lisa held a place in her heart that no one else could fill. Frida had worked hard to shield her daughter from the relentless glare of fame that followed Abba, giving Lisa as normal a childhood as possible. Later, Lisa had a son of her own, Jonathan, continuing the family line with quiet grace. But in that fateful January, everything changed. Lisa's car was struck with such force that she died instantly at just 30 years old. The news crushed Frida. Already familiar with grief, she now faced the unimaginable pain of losing a child. The devastation was so complete that she abandoned the public eye, canceling an album project she had been working on and retreating into silence. In later interviews, she confessed that it felt impossible to move past such a loss, that the world itself seemed to collapse around her. For Frida, tragedy was no stranger, but this loss carved deeper wounds than any before. By the late 1990s, Frida's world was once again shaken to its core. In 1999, only a year after the devastating loss of her daughter Lieselot, she faced yet another heartbreak, the death of her husband, Prince Heinrich Reuss. Born on March 27, 1950, in Switzerland, Prince Reuss was not only a landscape architect, but also the heir to the once prominent House of Reuss. When he and Frida married on August 26, 1992, it marked one of the happiest chapters of her life. Their union transformed her title to Princess Reuss, Countess of Plauen, and brought with it a sense of belonging and companionship that she had long craved. The 1990s, for Frida, were defined as much by this love as by the quiet joy of becoming part of his family. Frida often spoke warmly of Heinrich. To her, he was more than a partner. He was a man with humor, depth, and spirituality, someone who could make her laugh, but also give her peace. He created a close-knit home life, bringing his two daughters from a previous marriage into Frida's world and fostering a household filled with warmth. After years of turbulence and loss, this stability seemed to finally offer her the calm she needed. But fate proved cruel. In 1999, Prince Reuss was diagnosed with lymphoma, and the disease advanced with devastating speed. Despite his strength and determination to fight, he passed away on October 29, 1999, in Stockholm at just 49 years old. For Frida, the pain was almost unbearable. Losing her daughter had left an open wound. Losing her husband so soon after felt like salt poured into it. The double tragedy plunged her into an extended period of mourning and isolation. Frida later confessed that, at the time, grief engulfed her entirely. It felt as though the world around her collapsed under the weight of sorrow. She leaned on faith, friends, and family for support. But even with that, the sadness remained a heavy shadow. Still, with time, she found small ways to heal. She sought refuge in nature, spending long hours outdoors, and devoted herself to charitable causes that reflected her values. These quiet acts of purpose slowly helped her emerge from despair. Over the years, she eased her way back into the public eye, reconnecting with her music and reminding the world of the extraordinary voice that had once captivated millions. For fans, her resilience was as inspiring as her artistry. Frida's story, marked by heartbreak yet illuminated by perseverance, remains a powerful reminder of the human ability to survive and transform pain into strength. Her scars ran deep, but her unwavering spirit and her legacy as one of Abba's defining voices continued to shine. And as Frida's personal story unfolded, it intertwined once more with the larger history of Abba itself, a history filled not only with dazzling success, but also with the struggles that eventually led to the group's unraveling. After Abba's split, the world waited to see what its members would do next, and Benny Andersson and Björn Ulvaeus did not disappoint. Perhaps the most celebrated of their post-ABBA ventures was the musical Chess, created in 1984 in collaboration with renowned lyricist Tim Rice. Set against the tense backdrop of the Cold War, the production combined political drama with human emotion, earning praise from critics and drawing large audiences. The standout hit One Night in Bangkok quickly climbed the charts, proving that Andersson and Ulvaeus could step beyond pop stardom and master the art of theatrical composition. Their creative partnership continued with Kristina från Duvemåla, an ambitious musical inspired by Vilhelm Moberg's beloved series about Swedish immigrants. This project was deeply rooted in Swedish culture and history, showcasing the duo's ability to tell profound stories through music. Swedish critics hailed it as a masterpiece of emotional depth and authenticity, cementing their reputation as versatile composers who could seamlessly weave folk influences, classical tones, and contemporary soundscapes. But without question, their greatest triumph after ABBA came in 1999 with Mamma Mia! This jukebox musical, filled with ABBA's most iconic hits, reintroduced their music to an entirely new generation. The production became a worldwide sensation, with countless international stagings and an enormously successful film adaptation released in 2008. Suddenly, ABBA's catalog wasn't just nostalgia. It was alive again, dancing its way into pop culture with fresh vitality. Outside of their joint collaborations, Benny and Bjorn also pursued independent projects that revealed the breadth of their artistry. Benny immersed himself in composing and producing, releasing solo works such as Piano, which highlighted his gift as an instrumentalist and composer. His style often reflected his fascination with classical music, blending it with modern sensibilities. Bjorn, while maintaining his creative bond with Benny, explored his own path as well, writing for musicals and even contributing to television music. Both men, in their own ways, continued to expand their horizons, while never straying far from the spirit of collaboration that defined their careers. Through all of this, ABBA's legacy endured, not only as a band that had once conquered the charts, but as an emblem of musical innovation, cultural influence, and resilience. Their songs remain timeless, their artistry admired across generations. And yet, with such a powerful legacy, came a lingering question: would the four ever stand together again? That question fueled endless rumors, whispers of unimaginable offers, and eventually, the most unexpected twist in ABBA's story. At long last, the highly anticipated album Voyage arrived on November 5, 2021. It carried with it 10 brand new songs that not only reaffirmed ABBA's place as true pop icons, but also wove in a modern touch, showing they could still advance with the times while honoring their roots. Critics embraced the record warmly, and fans, both lifelong admirers and brand new listeners, were swept away by its themes of resilience, longing, and nostalgia. Among the tracks, I Still Have Faith in You stood out as a beacon of hope, a heartfelt message of unity and continuity. It was a reminder that even in an ever-changing musical landscape, ABBA's emotional depth and timeless sound still spoke directly to the soul. But the album was only the beginning. On May 27, 2022, something truly groundbreaking took place in London's Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. The premiere of ABBA Voyage, a concert series unlike anything the world had ever seen. Inside the custom-built 30,000-seat ABBA Arena, audiences experienced an unforgettable fusion of past and present. With a live 10-piece band on stage and stunning digital avatars, affectionately called ABBAtars, recreating the group as they looked in 1979, fans were transported back in time. Through motion capture technology and the artistry of industrial light and magic, ABBA seemed to step onto the stage again, bridging generations in a way no traditional concert could achieve. The results were nothing short of spectacular. In its very first year, more than 1 million fans poured into the venue, generating an estimated $322 million for the local economy. For 15 straight months, the show ran at near full capacity, with almost 1.5 million tickets sold at an average price of $85, around $115. Beyond ticket sales, the ripple effect was immense. Restaurants, hotels, and shops in London all thrived, while the concerts themselves directly and indirectly supported more than 5,000 jobs. In the wake of the pandemic, ABBA Voyage was more than entertainment. It was part of London's cultural and economic revival. Yet the true significance of this project extended beyond the numbers. ABBA Voyage set a bold new standard for live performance, blending digital artistry with physical presence to create what many now call a phygital concert experience. This innovation offered hope not just for ABBA, but for future artists, whether retired or even no longer alive, who might one day return to the stage in digital form. Critics praised the show for its daring creativity, while audiences left in awe reminded once again that ABBA has always been more than a pop group. They are pioneers in reshaping what music can mean. For ABBA, Voyage wasn't simply about nostalgia. It was proof of their enduring adaptability in a world where trends shift almost overnight. As Bjorn Ulvaeus himself explained, "We are honored to use this innovative technology to present our music to a new generation. With new singles, a revolutionary concert experience, and renewed global attention, the group managed to captivate both faithful fans and curious newcomers, enriching London's cultural heartbeat while fortifying their own timeless legacy. Even today, ABBA's music continues to resonate, their spirit as vibrant as ever, reminding us that great art knows no expiration date. So, what about you? How do you feel about this extraordinary reunion and the incredible journey of ABBA? If this story touched you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring tales. And share your thoughts in the comments, because your voice is part of the conversation too.